For many people, a vacation is meant to provide them with a break from the mundane grind of everyday life. No more 6 a.m. alarms, no more running around the house getting themselves and the kids ready for school, no more grueling 9-hour shifts on their feet. At least for a little while, but for some people, a relaxing vacation can become their worst nightmare. Join us for today's episode as we examine 3 creepy cases of people who disappeared while on holiday. Theo Hayez. 18-year-old Theo Hayez was last seen at 11 p.m. on the night of May 31st, 2019, when he left the Cheeky Monkeys nightclub in Byron Bay, New South Wales, Australia. Theo, a Belgian national, had arrived in Australia at the tail end of 2018 on a working holiday visa, and for months he had lived in the country, adapting to a new life and making friends along the way. Notably, Theo had been due to fly home just 1 week after he vanished. When his family failed to hear from him around this time, they reported him missing. His official missing persons report was dated June 6th. On that same day, the Wake Up hostel where he had been staying contacted the police because he had been due to check out 3 days earlier but had not arrived to collect his belongings. The vast majority of the items he'd brought to Australia had been left behind at the hostel, including his passport. Following these reports, the police began looking into Theo's whereabouts. His phone pinged in the proximity of Cape Byron on June 1st, the day after he disappeared. Information from Google Maps showed that he had looked up his hostel on the app in order to get home, but had walked in the opposite direction. He then stopped for 7 minutes at the local cricket nets before taking an unlit and difficult path through bushland to Tallow Beach in Byron Bay, where he then continued to a spot known locally as Cozy Corner. Cooperation from WhatsApp allowed the police to look at his recent messages, but there was only so much they were able to view due to the app's encryption measures. Authorities conducted extensive searches for Theo, using helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, divers, and rock climbers. His parents travelled to Australia days after he went missing to help with the search efforts and to speak in person with investigators. His father told the press while appealing for information, "When I left Belgium, I promised Theo's little brother, Lucas, I would bring his big brother home. Please help me keep my promise to him." Theo's family were very vocal and determined when it came to the official investigation, often pushing authorities to stay focused and active on the case. In July, over a month after the 18-year-old vanished, a grey Puma hat, similar to the one he was wearing at the time of his disappearance, was discovered in bushland at Tallow Beach by volunteer searchers. No evidence beyond this was ever recovered, and it's unclear if the hat has ever been conclusively linked to Theo. With little to go on, police were left with theories. The leading speculation was that he'd fallen from cliffs near the lighthouse at Tallow Beach in a case of misadventure. His family don't believe that he'd have attempted such a feat in the dark. Police believe his body likely washed out to sea. Analysis of his phone data showed that the device moved up the beach onto the headland and remained in the area until it disconnected completely on the afternoon of June 1st. However, authorities could not determine why Theo might have gone to the beach, proposing several different possibilities: that he'd gotten lost, that he'd been misdirected by Google Maps, that he was suicidal, or that he'd been under the influence of drugs or alcohol. There were also proposals that his body hadn't been recovered because of human intervention, or that it had become lost in the brushland. There was also a theory that a shark had taken it. In 2022, an inquest was held into Theo's death. State Coroner Teresa O'Sullivan described the 18-year-old as a clever, gentle, and thoughtful young man with a bright future ahead of him. She concluded that he had likely died in or around Byron Bay on June 1st, 2019. However, she added there was insufficient evidence to substantiate or dismiss any theories proposed, including that he met with foul play or died by misadventure. She also observed that it was unknown if he had drugs or alcohol in his system at the time. Though O'Sullivan stated that Theo's phone data was consistent with the accident theory, she also said there remained a major difficulty with the hypothesis, observing that the idea that the 18-year-old went out on a dark and rough path late at night was inconsistent with his character. She stated, "Theo was a responsible and cautious young man. It is hard to see any pathway up from Cozy Corner at all at night. It is very dark and dangerous. The family submit it would be completely inconsistent with Theo's character to attempt something so reckless, particularly alone." She added that the theory also assumed that a tourist unfamiliar with the area would have been able to make their way through the dense bushland to reach Tallow Beach in the first place, and observed that the phone data showed he'd taken a very difficult and unnatural path through the bushland. The case is still unsolved. 18-year-old Theo Hayez was last seen on May 31st, 2019 at 11 p.m. when he left the Cheeky Monkey nightclub on Johnson Street in Byron Bay, New South Wales, Australia. If you have any information about his disappearance, you can contact Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000. Emma Tresp. 71-year-old Emma Tresp lived in North Little Rock, Arkansas at the time of her disappearance in the late 1990s. By all accounts, she was a devout Catholic and a lover of travel. Having raised her children earlier in life, she was now enjoying retirement, and in 1998 she decided to combine her two favorite things, traveling and religion, by going on a retreat at a Benedictine monastery near Pecos, New Mexico. It was a location she knew well and had visited before. On August 31st, 1998, Emma left her daughter's home in Stillwater, Oklahoma to begin the drive to Pecos, but she never made it to the retreat. She was last seen in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, when she purchased gas at a station there at around 3 p.m. It is estimated that she should have reached the monastery at around 4:30 or 5, provided she didn't stop again. Notably, the weather was clear and mild, and the sun set between 8 and 9 p.m. that night, so it wasn't likely that she'd be driving in the dark unless she had gotten lost or turned around earlier in the day. Emma's car, a white 4-door 1997 Honda Civic with license plate 672AOK, was recovered on September 13th after a hunter stumbled across it. It was locked and abandoned along a rural road named 63A, known locally as Devil's Road, near the Pecos area and about 10 to 15 miles from Route 63. Route 63 was the road that Emma wanted, and although they had similar names, the two areas were difficult to confuse, given that one was a dirt path and the other was a proper paved road. Authorities discovered that Emma's vehicle had become lodged on a large rock in the road, cracking the oil pan. They believed that she subsequently walked away to get help, but it's unknown in what direction she might have headed. They observed footprints leading around the car, but then they disappeared. Search dogs were unable to track her scent beyond the vehicle. In the following days of the discovery, officers and volunteers scoured the nearby forested area searching for any sign of her, but nothing was found. No blood, no torn clothing, no signs of foul play or an animal attack. She likely had her handbag with her at the time she went missing because it was not inside the car, but all of her other belongings had been left behind, including her mobile phone, which was fully charged. Emma's children discovered that she never arrived at the monastery a short time after she went missing. Their first instinct was to begin calling hospitals, thinking that she'd met with some kind of an accident, but they found no trace of her. They then began passing out flyers and looking for her car before it was located on the 13th by the hunter. They reported her missing on September 8th, having exhausted all leads. Emma's children noted that their mother was mentally sharp and had not suffered any kind of memory loss or related incidents despite her older age. However, they noted that she had, on several occasions, gone the wrong way while driving. Although Emma knew the route to the monastery well, it is entirely possible that this is why she ended up on Route 63A rather than Route 63. There have been no new updates in the case since, and Emma is still missing. If she is still alive, she will be 98 years old. Emma Tresp was last seen at 3 p.m. on the afternoon of August 31st, 1998, when she stopped at a petrol station in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. She is described as a white woman with graying brown hair and green eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she weighed between 120 to 135 pounds. She is between 5'6" and 5'7" inches tall. While it is unknown what she was wearing at the time of her disappearance beyond a t-shirt and trousers, other notable features of her appearance include a mole on the right side of her nose and the fact that she is a glasses wearer. She also has varicose veins. If you have any information about Emma's disappearance or her current whereabouts, you can contact the New Mexico Department of Public Safety at 505-827-9300. Barbara Monaco. 18-year-old Barbara Monaco lived in Derby, Connecticut at the time of her disappearance. However, her sister Joanne had plans to visit Virginia Beach, Virginia with two of her friends the day after Barbara's 18th birthday, and decided to bring her sister along with her on the trip as a gift. They left on August 20th and checked in at the Aloha Motel on 15th Street with plans to stay for 1 week. The four girls spent most of their days lounging on the beach and partying at night in the local bars. 2 days later, on August 22nd, Barbara and Joanne went to the Country Comfort Bar on Pacific Avenue. During their time here, as they hung out with Joanne's friends, Barbara was repeatedly pestered by a man who kept pushing her to accept his invitation to go out on a date. He reportedly bragged about having a yacht in the hopes that it would convince her to say yes, but by all accounts, Barbara was uninterested. Besides, she already had a date lined up with a local bartender she'd met earlier on the holiday. Barbara left her sister and her friends that night at around 1 a.m. to head to a bar named Peabody's, about 6 blocks away, where she'd arranged to meet the bartender. According to witness statements, the 18-year-old got into a car on Pacific Avenue, which contained around 4 or 5 men. She was never seen again. Joanne was concerned when she didn't see her sister again later in the morning. She recalled, "I knew she'd never leave the hotel and not come back." She approached the bartender, who told her Barbara had never shown up, and she subsequently reached out to the police, who told her that she would have to wait 48 hours before she could file a missing persons report. She tried multiple times to get the police to take her seriously, but they stood firm, claiming that because Barbara was 18 and legally an adult, she'd have to accept the 2-day waiting period. Joanne then contacted their parents, who drove down to Virginia Beach and began a civilian search for the teenager. Family members recalled that the police were incredibly unhelpful at the time, and even lost photographs of Barbara that they'd provided. They were confident that she hadn't run away, as it was just 2 weeks until her older sister, Teresa, got married. The family ended up going through with the ceremony, hoping Barbara would show up. Teresa remembered thinking that her baby sister was being held against her will. "You hear about these things," she said, "but don't think it will happen to you." In their desperation to find her, Barbara's parents reached out to psychics who offered them areas to search, but nothing was found. A private investigator was also hired by the family, but he ultimately concluded there was nothing to go on. Virginia Beach police reportedly became bothered by the family's frequent calls for updates. The family stated that the police theory was that she'd become involved with a local cult and taken up with them. Bizarrely, shortly after Barbara went missing, an anonymous caller told the family not to trust the police. Then, about 8 months after she vanished, the family offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to Barbara's whereabouts or her return, whether or not she was alive or dead. A man soon responded to the offer, with the family receiving a handwritten note from someone calling themselves Condor. He wrote, "No police, I demand to remain anonymous. If you will not play my way, there is no deal." In April of 1979, Barbara's father was equipped with a bulletproof vest and sent into a hotel lobby carrying a briefcase containing the cash, while the authorities staked out the area. They apprehended Condor when he arrived on the scene. While in custody, he He told investigators that Barbara had been abducted by 4 men and raped and killed. He stated that she was driven to a lakeside cottage near Oceana, Virginia, and her body was dumped in a lake. His information led authorities to dredge a lake, revealing cinder blocks and rope, which had been used in the assault to keep her body down after it was thrown into the water. However, her body itself was not there, and had possibly been moved. The informant subsequently passed a polygraph test, though they are unreliable, and he stopped cooperating after investigators refused to give him immunity because they believed he was involved in the rape and murder. Notably, the 4 suspects in the case have been identified. Barbara's family even know their names. One of them, James Jimbo Moore Jr., took his own life in 2001, hours after being questioned by Virginia Beach police. He told investigators details that he could have only known if he had seen Barbara on the night she went missing. Joanne told the New Haven Register, "The people who did this are walking around like nothing happened. They committed murder and are getting away with it." The family added that one suspect resides in California and the other 2 live in Virginia. Reportedly, no arrests have been made because Barbara's body has not been recovered. Despite the information available to the police, Barbara's remains have never been found, and no arrests have been made in the case. Barbara Monaco was 18 when she vanished from Virginia Beach, Virginia, in the early hours of August 23, 1978. She is described as a white woman with brown hair and brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a long-sleeved yellow shirt, blue jeans, a brown belt, and clogs. She is 5'4" and weighed 110 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She had previously suffered a hairline fracture to her left arm and is blind in one eye. If she is still alive, she will be 64 years old. Anyone with information about her disappearance can contact the Virginia Beach Police Department at 757-285-4241. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own theories and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.